Но как же проводить в этих условиях подобные встречи? О чем говорить? Кто вообще ведет переговоры с теми, кто делает ставку на террор, с террористами? И за что их поощрять, предоставляя передышку в боевых действиях, которая будет использована для накачки режима западным оружием, для продолжения насильственной мобилизации и подготовки других террористических актов, подобных тем, которые были осуществлены в Брянской и Курской областях.
This is my video update on this Thursday afternoon, June the 5th, on a very, very hot day here in Athens, Greece. It is hotter here than Cyprus, much hotter here than in Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And we have to start things off with Putin's statements on Ukraine. And he made these statements during a government meeting, a virtual video government meeting. And this was an angry Putin, a very angry Putin, and he made some of the toughest statements on Ukraine that he has made since the beginning of the special military operation. He came very close to calling the government in Ukraine, the illegitimate government in Ukraine, he called them. So he made sure to say that they are illegitimate, but he came very close to labeling them as a terrorist organization. But he didn't quite get there. He didn't get there. He came very, very close to saying they are a terrorist organization. And of course, if he were to say that, if the Russian president were to say that they are a terrorist organization, then that would mean that the special military operation would get upgraded to an anti-terrorism operation, and that would change everything. That would change everything, especially for the leadership in Kiev. But he didn't quite get there, at least in my opinion. He didn't get there, but it could be coming. Maybe Putin is signaling that an upgrade to the SMO is coming. Or maybe Putin is giving them one last chance. So let me read you what Putin said at this meeting, and you be the judge if he is saying that the Alenski regime is a terrorist organization or if he is stopping short of labeling them that. Putin said the recent acts on railway sabotage in Russia's Bryansk and Kursk regions were undoubtedly a terrorist act, Putin said. He added that the decisions to carry out such crimes were, of course, made in Ukraine by the political leadership. The strike on the civilian population was intentional, Putin said, and this only confirms our concern that the already illegitimate regime in Kiev, which once seized power, is gradually turning into a terrorist organization, and its sponsors are becoming accomplices to terrorists. Gradually turning into is what Putin says, and its sponsors are becoming accomplices. So the act absolutely was a terrorist act against Bryansk and Kursk trains, no doubt about that. Civilians were targeted and civilians were killed and injured. And according to Russian investigators, Ukraine was absolutely behind this, and now they are starting to hint at perhaps some foreign accomplices in this terrorist act. That's what the Russian investigators are starting to suggest. But Putin just stops short of saying the Alenski regime, the illegitimate Alenski regime, he said, is almost there, but they're not quite there. They're gradually turning into a terrorist organization. That's what he says. So that's his statement. He he didn't talk about the attacks on the airfields. At least I haven't seen any statements of Putin talking about the attacks on the airfields. He stuck to the attacks on the trains in Bryansk and Kursk. So Putin also said today, amid heavy losses and retreating along the entire line of contact, the Kiev leadership has turned to organizing terrorist acts in an attempt to intimidate Russia. Despite this, he added, Ukrainian officials are requesting a pause in the fighting and proposing meetings at the highest level. But how can such meetings be held under these conditions? Putin said. What is there to talk about? Who conducts negotiations with those who rely on terror? With terrorists, question mark. It's that question mark that he puts at the end. How can I talk to these people? Who can rely on these people who conduct such acts of terror? He says, with terrorists, question mark. Should I label them as a terrorist organization? That's why you have that question mark there. Should I? Am I going to? Should I give them one last chance? That question mark at the end. That's big. Punctuation makes a difference. Anyway, Putin also said that apparently we are dealing with people who not only have no real competence in anything, true, but also lack even a basic political culture, true, if they allow themselves to make certain statements, including direct insults against those they claim to want to negotiate with. So he's referencing the fact that Alenski cannot stop talking about how the Russian negotiating team is not at the right level, and they're not professional. He said much worse things about the negotiating team. They have no real authority, and he was calling them names, and he just goes on and on about this because he wants a meeting with Putin and Trump, because that would give him legitimacy. But Putin's saying, how can we take these guys seriously? They have no competence, and they have no political culture. When we send a very serious, a very qualified negotiating team, the negotiating team which was at the 2022 Istanbul talks. There was no problem with the negotiating team back then. Why is there a problem with this negotiating team now? But that's Putin's statement there. Alenski just cannot shut up about the qualifications of the negotiating team. And he can't shut up about how he wants a meeting with Putin and Trump. No political culture. Churchill #2 has no political culture? Come on, he's the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin doesn't have political culture? So that was Putin's statement. An interesting statement. He's almost there. He is almost at the point where this becomes an ATO. And Alenski, he was speaking about the phone call between Trump and Putin. I'll get to that in a bit. And he was talking about the negotiations and Yermak meeting with Kellogg and all of these things that are going on. And Alenski, he was scared, man. He looked scared. He talked about the Istanbul memorandums that were exchanged, and how the Russian memorandum is not really a memorandum, but more of an ultimatum. He rejected it, by the way. He rejected the entire memorandum. He said this is an ultimatum, and it will not be taken seriously by the Ukrainian side. This memorandum is a misunderstanding. Alenski said he also criticized the diplomatic process itself, saying to continue diplomatic meetings in Istanbul at a level that decides nothing is meaningless. So for Alenski, if you go by his statement, he can change his mind tomorrow, depending on what orders he gets. But right now, his orders are to stop negotiating. So basically, Alenski is saying that the negotiations are done. They're dead, over with. And he said it was an ultimatum, the Russian memorandum. So he rejected that as well. But when you listen to Alenski speak and you look at him delivering these statements, the guy is obviously scared. And some people, rightly so, they're saying that he's scared because of retaliation to everything that happened last week. Terrorist attack against the trains, attack on the airfields and on Russia's nuclear assets, and then the failed attempt to take out the Kerch Bridge. All of this happening right before the talks in Istanbul. That Alenski is very worried about the retaliation, especially after Trump's call with Putin. But you know why else Zelensky is worried? I think he's even more worried. Yes, he's worried about a retaliation, but I believe he's even more worried about Putin upgrading this from an SMO to an ATO. Everyone's missing that. All the analysis is saying Alenski is very scared because a big retaliation could be coming. But I believe Alenski's really scared because if this thing gets upgraded to an ATO, everything changes. So that's Alenski's response. Let's get to that phone call between Putin and Trump. And Trump actually is the person that revealed this phone call, which kind of came out of nowhere. I imagine that it was the United States that initiated this phone call. Trump must have initiated this phone call with Putin, and he posted this on Truth Social. And it was up for about, I want to say, 30 minutes to an hour. And then it got taken down. And it disappeared for about, I want to say, 20 to 30 minutes, give or take. And then it got reposted on Truth Social, and then it got posted as well on the White House X account. Nothing changed from the original statement. The repost was the same exact post as the original. There was no changing in any of the words or anything. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what went down, why it was posted, then taken down, then reposted. But I thought that was interesting. Maybe something's going on. Maybe something is not going on. Maybe it got taken down by accident. I don't know. Maybe Trump didn't get the okay from someone on his staff or someone else to post this. But it got posted. At the end of the day, when all was said and done, the second time around, it was posted, and it's still up. And here is what Trump said. I just finished speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. The call lasted approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. We also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision pertaining to nuclear weapons, which must be made quickly. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, and on this, I believe that we are in agreement. President Putin suggested that he will participate in the discussions with Iran and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. It is my opinion that Iran has been slow walking their decision on this very important matter, and we will need a definitive answer in a very short period of time. An interesting message from Trump. Two parts, a two-part Truth Social post. The first part is about the call with Putin and Ukraine, and the second part is a pivot to discussing Iran. A very interesting message from Trump. A much different tone in this Truth Social post about Putin, speaking with Putin, than his previous Truth Social posts. connected to Project Ukraine and Putin, where he has expressed his anger and frustration towards Putin and warning Putin that he is preventing bad things from happening, and Putin's playing with fire. The post that he made 4 days ago, and after he posted that, Lindsey Graham was in Kiev, and something I missed, which is that as Lindsey Graham was in Kiev, there's now video which shows that Mike Pompeo was in Odessa. And then you had the attack on the airfields, the attack on the trains, and then you had the attack on the airfields. That's the sequence of events. So a different tone, a much different tone from Trump. He doesn't mention that there was an attack on Russia's nuclear assets. He just mentions docked airplanes. That's what he says. And then he goes on to say that he talked to Putin about other attacks from both sides. So he mentions that as well. There's no condolences for the attack on the trains, on the passenger train, which left so many people dead and injured, including children. So there's no condolences from the president there. But let's remember that Marco Rubio, when he spoke to Lavrov, Rubio did say that the United States sends its condolences to Russia on the train attacks. So the State Department has said to Russia, has sent their condolences to Russia on those train attacks. Trump does not go there. By the way, Lavrov, when the meeting was taking place, and Putin made the statements about Ukraine and the train attacks, Lavrov and Medinsky, they said that the negotiations with Ukraine and the talks with the United States must continue, because it's important that they continue, because one of the purposes of all of the attacks that went down over the last week were to try and derail the normalization of relations with the United States and to try and sabotage the talks between Russia and Ukraine. So Lavrov and Medinsky, they advised President Putin to continue the negotiations with Ukraine and continue the dialogue with the United States. So I thought I would just say that. So I imagine this phone call between Trump and Putin was something like this. Trump telling Putin, I know you're going to have to retaliate against what happened, but don't retaliate too hard, perhaps. And then I can see Putin telling Trump, sorry, man, we're going to have to retaliate very hard. And then Trump saying, understood, got you. That's how I can kind of see the conversation going down. Definitely Trump understood that Russia's going to have to retaliate strongly. That's the words that he used. The word that he used is strongly. And Trump acknowledging that we're not heading towards peace. He says that as well. So a very different tone from President Trump. How much did Trump know? That is the big question, isn't it? Ushakov was asked about this, Putin's aide. He was asked about the phone call, and Ushakov did say that Putin told Trump that Ukraine is constantly trying to sabotage the talks, and Putin pointed to deliberate attacks against purely civilian targets, the civilian population. That's a direct quote from Ushakov. So Putin told Trump about the train attacks, about the airfields. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Putin brought all of this up. And he's probably very angry and probably very betrayed as he was telling Trump this. But Ushakov also said that that Trump told Putin that he was unaware of Kiev's plans to attack Russian airfields. Ushakov said this topic was raised in the course of a telephone conversation between the two leaders. So Trump is sticking with the narrative that he had no idea. He doesn't really have much of a choice, does he? Whichever way he goes with this one, even if it's untrue, even if it's true, and Trump, no, even if it's untrue and Trump did know, then he still has to say that he didn't know. He doesn't have any other choice in this. And I don't know, maybe Trump didn't know. Maybe he knew a little bit. Maybe he knew a lot. Maybe we'll find out one of these days what exactly happened. But whatever the case, the only option for Trump, for the Trump administration and the White House, is to say that they did not know. That's the only option that they have. And it doesn't look good either way, as I said in my video update yesterday. If the Trump administration had no idea, it looks bad. Who's giving the orders then for these types of operations? How could you not have any idea that this was going down? 18 months planning. You're telling me you had no idea. Mr. President, that looks bad. And of course, Trump knowing, that looks very, very bad. So you have to go with the narrative that you had no idea. As bad as it looks, as bad as that looks, and it makes it seem as if Trump doesn't know what's going on in his own administration, you have to stick with that. That's your only option. Anyway, that was a statement from Ushakov. And the second part of this Truth Social message is quite interesting, because Trump pivots very quickly to Iran, and he acknowledges that Russia can play a key role in the Iran talks. This is something that we have been saying on the Duran for many, many months. We were the first and probably the only channel that took the viewpoint that if there's one country that can help Trump deliver a deal with Iran, it is Russia. And now Trump is admitting this, he's acknowledging this, and he is saying that perhaps Putin can play a part in the Iran talks, which means when he posts this on Truth Social, that means that the United States and Trump, they have absolutely approached the Kremlin so that they can seek Russia's help in getting a deal with Iran. And when Trump talks about how he wants a deal quickly, time is running out and we need a quick deal, I get the sense, as I was reading this post on Truth Social, I get the sense that Trump is not so worried about time running out for Iran. In other words, it doesn't seem like he's talking about time running out for Iran. It seems like he's talking about time running out for his administration, in a sense. In other words, Trump wants a deal. He wants a deal fast because he's got all kinds of foreign policy issues right now. All kinds of things are going very, very, very wrong when it comes to foreign policy. He's stuck in Ukraine. He can't get anything in Ukraine. Gaza, Israel, Hamas, can't get anything figured out there. China can't get that resolved. Things got tense with Liberation Day tariffs. Then it looked like things were calming down. Now things are tense again. And so, as I read this message, I was thinking, Trump is saying we need a deal quickly because he needs a deal quickly. He needs a deal. Iran is the one, it's really weird because Iran is the one foreign policy issue where if you take a step back and think about it, all the parties involved, all the parties negotiating, actually agree, right? They agree on the core issue, which is no nuclear weapons for Iran. The United States says no nuclear weapons for Iran. Russia says no nuclear weapons for Iran. Saudi Arabia and the countries in the region say no nuclear weapons for Iran. Hey, buddy, it's nice and cool here, isn't it? Yeah, I know. I'm going to join you. Relax, relax, relax. Continue to rest. I'm just going to sit right down here and continue to talk about the news. So, yeah, in Iran doesn't want nuclear weapons. So all the parties involved agree, no nuclear weapons for Iran. So it's the one deal that he can probably make quickly. And he's going to need Russia's help. And he needs a win. He needs a foreign policy win. Man, does he need a foreign policy win. So that's what I got out of his message there as he was talking about Iran. But we said it on the Duran. Alexander said it. It's Russia. Russia is the key to getting a deal with Iran and to making sure that Iran complies with that deal and dealing with the uranium and all of that stuff. Russia is the key. So let's move on. Let's move on. The U.S. State Department actually put out a warning yesterday for Ukraine, for U.S. citizens, embassy staff, employees, a warning about a possible big Russian strike. So they warned all of the U.S. citizens, all of the spies, all of the CIA people, the spooks, everybody that is in Ukraine, the mercenaries, I imagine, everybody, all of the Americans that are in Ukraine, they warned them a big strike is coming. So be aware and seek shelter. If something starts to happen, find some shelter because it's going to be big. So that was the message there. The New York Times, they commented on Trump's call with Putin. And the New York Times, in an article with the title, Trump says Putin plans to retaliate for Ukrainian attack on warplanes. The New York Times says that according to their sources, Trump believes that Alenski is a bad guy. That's the words that they use. He's a bad guy. He's one bad hombre. He's a bad guy that's taking the world to nuclear war. When it comes to Putin, Trump is all right with Putin, according to the New York Times. He's frustrated with both. The New York Times says that. Trump is very frustrated with both Mr. Putin and Mr. Alenski. He reserves special animosity, according to the New York Times, for the leader of the country that was invaded in the first place. Mr. Trump told aides repeatedly that Mr. Alenski is a bad guy who is edging the world to the precipice of nuclear war. But he has, at other times, told advisors that it is understandable that Mr. Alenski is fighting back, given that he is in a war against an enemy who seems determined to keep bombing Ukrainian cities. You know, I don't really believe this reporting from the New York Times, or at least the way they phrase it. I believe that Trump does not like Alenski. J.D. Vance definitely does not like Alenski. But Trump, I don't think he's too fond of Churchill number 2. And he probably does say that Alenski's a bad guy. But, you know, if you were the president of the United States and you had 1,000% control of Alenski and of the country, you pay for everything in Ukraine. You control the country from top to bottom. You pay all the salaries. You control the government. Ukraine is your proxy, right? And this guy, this bad guy, according to the New York Times, is taking the world to nuclear war. Whatever the situation, if you're president of the United States, you would say, I have to stop this guy. Whatever's going on with Russia, whatever I believe about the Ukraine conflict, and no matter how I feel about Russia, I can't let this guy take us to nuclear war. And you would stop him. But that's not happening. So I don't know. I don't believe the the way the New York Times is wording this or phrasing this. I don't buy it. But the New York Times also says, and not many people are talking about this paragraph in the New York Times. It says, in what amounted to a strategic and symbolic blow, Ukraine hid drones across Russia before attacking airfields in 5 regions stretching across 5 time zones. The attack cost about $7 billion in damage. Mr. Trump described the episode as if he were a bystander and suggested that an aggressive Russian response was a fait accompli. I find that last paragraph, that last sentence, to be really interesting because they're talking about, New York Times is talking about the phone call between Trump and Putin, and they're saying that the airstrikes were mentioned, and Trump is acting. The New York Times said that he is acting as if he were a bystander, as if the United States, as if the president, when all of this went down, describing the episode, the New York Times says, describing the episode as if he were a bystander, describing the attack on docked airplanes. Is that what, that's what Trump said, right? Docked airplanes, describing the attack on Russia's docked airplanes. That's what he posted on Truth Social, as if Trump was a bystander. It feels as if the New York Times is saying that Trump was not a bystander, that the United States was not a bystander. That's what it feels like the New York Times is saying in this paragraph, in this sentence. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. From the NYT, the paper of record. All right, let's talk about Germany now. Germany and long-range missiles, everybody. Long-range missiles, according to the German defense minister, Mr. Pistorius. In a couple of weeks, Ukraine is going to have long-range missiles ready to launch. That is what Pistorius said. He said, Umerov and I agreed that Germany will finance the production of long-range weapons in Ukraine. The first systems could be put into service by the Ukrainian armed forces in a few weeks. Does Pistorius actually think that that everyone is stupid, that we're that dumb? Does he honestly believe that we are that freaking dumb? He wants us to believe that that speaking with Ukraine's defense minister, Germany is funding the production of long-range missiles in Ukraine. They're funding it. Ukraine is building them. And in just a couple of weeks, they will be ready. Just like that. Just like that. Just don't call them Taurus missiles. Just don't call them Taurus missiles. Scratch out the logo, scratch out the Taurus logo, and then call them something else. Call them Green Goblin missiles or something like that. Right? A couple of weeks, they're going to be ready. We're funding it. We're funding the production. They're being built inside of Ukraine at a facility in Ukraine. And in a couple of weeks, they're going to be ready to go. It's that easy. Maybe it is. Maybe it is that easy to manufacture, to mass produce long-range missiles in a war zone without Russia knowing and without Russia destroying that facility. And with Germany financing and funding it all. Remember when Annalena 360, when she was the foreign minister, and she was asked about the Leopard tanks? Germany is going to be sending tanks into Ukraine to fight Russia. And Annalena said that the German Leopard tanks, once they're delivered to Ukraine, are no longer German Leopard tanks. They become Ukraine Leopard tanks. Well, in this instance, these long-range missiles They're being manufactured, allegedly, in a couple of weeks in Ukraine. And don't call them tourist missiles. Call them something else, right? Call them something else. The tourist missile. It's a bunker buster, huh? The tourist missile. And a lot of people are wondering, including myself, what platform is going to be used for the tourist missiles, because an F-16 is not going to work. An Su-24 is not going to work. But I did find articles from 2023 when they were talking about the tourist missiles back then, when it was Pirate Schultz as chancellor. And they were talking about modifying tourist missiles. This is back in November of 2023, modifying the tourist missiles so that Su-24s could be used. And the articles said that this would take 6 months. This was back in 2023. They said this could take 6 months, but it can be done. And that includes everything, modifying the Su-24, the training, all of it. All of it can be completed, according to these articles, in 6 months. Okay, so that's Pistorius. And what else? How are we doing on time? Yeah, let's wrap this video up. We're getting the news that the UK is going to boost their drone production for Project Ukraine. UK spends £350 million to boost Ukraine drone supply from 10,000 in 2024 to 100,000 in 2025. Good thing that the UK is using whatever little money they have to make weapons for Churchill #2, and they're not going to use it to better the lives of UK citizens. But anyway, that's the news from the UK. Slovenia elects Melania Trump's former lawyer as first female president. Prominent lawyer Natasha Pirk-Musar had represented former U.S. First Lady Melania Trump in copyright and other cases in her native Slovenia. And the word is that the new leader of Slovenia is calling on the European Union to engage in dialogue with Russia. Interesting development in Slovenia. And the new president in South Korea, remember everything that happened in South Korea a while back? Well, they finally got a new president, and the new president, he's going to continue to be aligned with the collective West. He's going to continue to send weapons to Project Ukraine. At least that's how it looks, to Europe, and then from Europe to Project Ukraine. But in one of his first statements, he said that Alenski provoked Russia. That's what he said. Alenski provoked Russia. Wow. He does not understand politics and diplomacy. That's what he said. Newly elected president of South Korea, Lee Jae-myung. He's called the Trump of South Korea. That's what they're calling him. But he's been in politics for a long time, and before he became the Trump of South Korea, he was calling himself the Bernie Sanders of South Korea. So he started off as the Bernie Sanders of South Korea, and then he became the Trump of South Korea. Well, now he's president. And one of his first statements was to say that this war was provoked. Russia was provoked. That is what he said. And the big news from yesterday, very big news, is that we got another travel ban in the United States. Trump bans citizens of 12 countries from entering the U.S. The proclamation applies to citizens of Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Citizens of Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela are subject to partial restrictions. The ban is set to begin Monday. Another travel ban, like in his first term. And from what I read, when Trump got into office, one of the first things that he did in January was that he directed the Department of State to look at countries that are a threat to the United States. People from countries who come to the United States that could pose a threat to the security of the United States, and it looks like this is the list that the State Department came up with. So that's something that's going to cause some outrage for Trump, and the Democrats are definitely going to seize on this travel ban. That's for sure. Tucker Carlson weighed in on Iran, which was interesting. He put out a super long post on X. We're talking a really long post on X. I'll read you the first paragraph, the first couple of paragraphs. Tucker said, Mark Levine was at the White House today lobbying for war with Iran. To be clear, Levine has no plans to fight in this or any other war. He demanded that American troops do it. We need to stop Iran from building nuclear weapons. He and like-minded ideologues in Washington are now arguing. They're just weeks away. If this sounds familiar, it's because the same people have been making the same claim since at least the 1990s. It's a lie. In fact, there is zero credible intelligence that suggests Iran is anywhere near building a bomb or has plans to. None. Anyone who claims otherwise is ignorant or dishonest. If the U.S. government knew Iran was weeks from possessing a nuclear weapon, we'd be at war already. Iran knows this, which is why they aren't building one. Iran also knows it's unwise to give up its weapons program entirely. Gaddafi tried that and wound up sodomized with a bayonet. As soon as Gaddafi disarmed, NATO killed him. Iran's leaders saw that happen. They learned the obvious lesson. As did most leaders around the world. They saw that happen and they learned the lesson from Gaddafi. It's a very, very long post on X, but basically Tucker Carlson is basically saying no war with Iran. We must stop a war with Iran. The neocons want a war with Iran. They're pushing hard for a war with Iran. Their ultimate goal is regime change, and they're trying to scare the American people into believing that Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon and attack the United States. Tucker Carlson said this is ridiculous. This is nonsense. And their ultimate goal is regime change in Iran. And if Trump falls for this, it's going to be a complete disaster. Regime change never works out, according to Tucker Carlson. And Iran is no pushover. He said Iran is strong. It will be a very difficult war. Iran is now part of BRICS, and they have the support of China. They have the support of Russia. They have a lot of friends in the region and a lot of ways to strike back at the United States in the region. And this could easily spiral into a world war. And Tucker Carlson is basically saying to Trump, don't fall for it. So that was an interesting post from Tucker Carlson. And do I have a clown world? I don't really have a good clown world. How about this? Trump orders probe into who really ran the country under Biden. The U.S. president has ordered an investigation to examine whether unelected aides effectively governed during his predecessor's term, given clear indications that President Biden lacked the capacity to exercise his presidential authority. If his advisors secretly used the mechanical signature pen to conceal this incapacity while taking radical executive actions, all in his name, that would constitute an unconstitutional wielding of power of the presidency, Trump's order stated. Was Biden really running things? Well, of course not. Of course not. But go ahead with the investigation. Let's see what happens. I don't think it's too difficult to figure out who was running things. Different people were running different parts of the Biden administration. That's my take on it. Foreign policy. I believe I was the first one that said this, actually. I'm very proud of that. But I believe that I was the first channel that said the person that's really running foreign policy in the Biden White House, the real foreign policy president, is Jake Sullivan. And his vice president was Blinkety Blinken. And I think that has proven correct. Jill Biden was running a lot of stuff. Biden's chief of staff was also running a lot of stuff. I don't think it was one person. Probably a bunch of people all doing their thing. as Biden was not doing much of anything. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDurand.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and X. Go to the Durand shop, pick up some merch like what I'm wearing in this video update. There is a link in the description box down below. Take care.